Hello, my name is Angela Broaddus, and I am a fifth grade science teacher here in Maryland, and I teach in Prince George's County Public Schools. And today we are going to be talking about two things. Our goal is to hit two birds with one stone. Today we're going to talk about a science instructional activity or strategy that you can implement during this time of distance learning, as well as talk about how to create assignments in Google Classroom. So, the science instructional strategy or activity that we're going to be talking about today is CERs. And what is a CER? Some of you guys may be familiar with it. Some of you may not be as familiar with it. In Prince George's County Public Schools science curriculum, CERs are used very often. So a CER is a claim, evidence, and reasoning prompt. Right here in front of you is an example of a CER, and I'll explain the different components of a CER to you. So essentially, the students are first presented with a question to address within their CER. So right where it says question, that's where you'll see the question. And essentially, it's the student's responsibilities to address each section of a CER. So they're going to provide a claim, they're going to provide evidence, and they're going to provide a reasoning. So a claim is just simply the student's response to the question. It's the student's answer to the question. In the claim, the students are going to say what they believe to be the correct answer. In the evidence section, the students are going to list or provide examples of evidence that would help support their claim. So the evidence can be anything from text that they may have read in class, from their science textbook, or informational text that may have been utilized during the lesson. Evidence can also include videos, investigations, experiments, a picture, a classroom discussion. And the students are able to cite those examples under the evidence section. And reasoning, all the reasoning section it's the students using their evidence to support their claim and explaining the scientific principle that goes hand in hand with also better addressing the question. And we can use this CER that I created as an example. When I create CERs, I like to make them interesting to help make sure the students remain engaged. And so I tend to have two other students maybe debating with one another, and the students have to select which student is correct or whatever the case may be. So let's go ahead and read the question. So for this CER, the question states, Ashley claims that Betelgeuse is the brightest star because it is red and is 520 light years away. Stephen disagrees with Ashley and claims that Spica is the brightest star because it is the hottest star, 250,000 degrees. Mark disagrees with both of them and claims that the sun is the brightest star since it is 8 light minutes away. Who is correct? Use the following CER to support the claim of the person who is correct. So let me backtrack for a second. This CER is based on the performance expectation 5-ESS1-1, and that comes from the Next Generation Science Standards. So here in Prince George's County, we do use the Next Generation Science Standards in our curriculum. And in this tab right here, I have exactly what performance expectation is being addressed. So 5-ESS1-1 states, support an argument that differences in the apparent brightness of the sun compared to other stars is due to their relative distances from the Earth. With Next Generation Science Standards, everything is three-dimensional, which means that there are three main components that revolve around each PE, an SEP, a DCI, and a CCC. So an SEP stands for Science and Engineering Practices, DCI stands for Disciplinary Core Ideas, and CCC stands for Cross-Cutting Concepts. So for this particular performance expectation, the SEP that students will be exposed to as students are unpacking and understanding the concept within the performance expectation is analyzing and interpreting data, and engaging in argument from evidence. If you remember our CER question, it definitely does address actually both of these SCPs. Students actually need to remember the data in order to actually answer that question. And one thing that you guys are not aware of, prior to the students doing the CER, they are given an opportunity to actually study a chart that has different data. And I'll pull up that chart so that you guys can get an idea of what that chart looks like. The disciplinary core idea for this performance expectation is the universe and its stars. The sun is a star that appears larger and brighter than other stars because it is closer. Stars range greatly in their distances from Earth. Once again, our claim, evidence, and reasoning that I was reading over earlier does address that DCI. And there's another part of the DCI. It says the orbits of Earth around the sun and of the moon around Earth, together with the rotation of Earth about an axis between its north and south poles, cause observable events, or patterns, excuse me. These include day and night, daily changes in the length and direction of shadows, and different positions of the sun, moon, and stars at different times of the day, month, and year. And that section of the disciplinary core ideas actually will get addressed later on as the students advance through the module that they're currently in. The cross-cutting concept that this performance expectation hits on are patterns and scale, proportion, and quantity. So patterns state similarities and differences in patterns can be used to sort, classify, communicate, and analyze simple rates of change for natural phenomena. And then scales, proportion, and quantity, natural objects exist from the very small to the immensely large. And the students are able to get a sense of that, especially as they learn more about the sun, learn more about how the sun is a star. And this is not the first time that students have learned this. They've learned this in grades prior. But now, as they're learning more about this, they're going into greater depth and detail about what it means for the sun to be a star, and then analyzing the apparent brightness of the sun to other stars, and so on and so forth. So, as I mentioned before, let me go ahead and show you the data chart. So right here, this is the data chart that the students were exposed to prior to doing the CER. This was created by another teacher in Prince George's County. And one thing that I should say, and you will learn this in my Getting to Know Me video, is that I have helped write science curriculum for Prince George's County public schools. And so I've worked really closely with some of the teachers who created this amazing curriculum. And another teacher created this resource, which has been beyond amazing. And I've loved it, used it, added some things here and there over the years because the content has been so great. And one thing I love is this data chart and how the students have an opportunity to dive into this data chart. This data chart is amazing because it also helps expose students' misconceptions that they may have about stars. So some students might think that stars that are hotter are closest to Earth, or they may think that stars that are brighter in color are closer to Earth, whatever the case may be. And this data chart helps students understand that it's actually the distance that determines how bright a star appears. So I really love it. And this data chart is used in conjunction with the CER. And one thing that I would say is that this CER, I would administer it during the elaboration section or evaluation section of a 5E lesson plan. And so for science in Prince George's County, we use a 5E lesson plan composed of an engagement, an exploration, an explanation, an elaboration, and an evaluation. And so I would actually use the CER to assess the students' understanding once they've had a chance to dig in the data and watch different videos that help provide with more evidence to gain a better understanding of how distance affects the apparent brightness of stars. Students will be able to do different hands-on investigations that would help solidify their understanding. And after all those activities, that is when I would give the CER, because by then the students have gathered enough evidence to help them address and answer the question. So for those of you guys who may be wondering who is correct, who do you guys think is correct? Before I say the response, I know there's some people who do teach 5th grade, so they already know the answer like that. So like I said, a star that is closer in distance to Earth is a star that will appear brighter. A star that is farther away from the Earth will appear less bright or will appear dim. And just because a star can be, there are some stars that are million times larger than the sun, yet they still appear dimmer than the sun because the sun is closer to Earth than those other stars. So for example, Betelgeuse is 520 light years away, but it's larger than the sun. But because it's so far, it's going to appear dimmer than the sun. So for who is correct, the correct student would be Mark. So students would say for their claim that Mark is correct. And then the students will provide different pieces of evidence, whether it's from the hands-on investigations that we've done, the videos that we've watched, informational text that we've dived into, the data charts that we've explored and analyzed. They would go ahead and list their evidence there. And then in the reasoning section, the students would use their evidence again to support their claim. So they would use their evidence to support why Mark is correct. And in the reasoning, they would elaborate and expand upon how the apparent brightness of a star is due to their relative distance from Earth. And that is the gist of it. One thing that I will say again is that the reasoning section, it is usually written in a paragraph form, and I tell my students that they need to write at least 5 sentences. That's a paragraph. Well, technically 3 to 5 sentences is a paragraph, but I ask for a minimum of 5 sentences. In the evidence section, if you notice it right here, I explicitly tell students they need to give me at least 2 examples of pieces of evidence that they can use to support their claim. And then they have their claim. Now, one thing I will say about a CER is that students are not used to a CER off the bat. This is not something that just comes naturally to them. The CERs are relatively new-ish, sort of. And so as a result, one thing that I do with my CERs in the very beginning, there's a lot of modeling. A lot of modeling. There's a lot of modeling. There's a lot of the class doing a CER together. So I will do a CER with the class and we'll answer each section together. I'll ask them to provide me with a claim. We may go back and forth about why their claim might be correct or incorrect. And we just work through the process together until the students get comfortable, until I notice that the students are comfortable enough to do their CER independently. So that is information about CERs, which are amazing strategies that can be used to assess students' understanding and to engage students in science instruction. Now, how would I create an assignment in Google Classroom? How would I create an assignment in Google Classroom where each student is able to do the CER? In light of distance learning, we all know that well, if you're not aware, Prince George's County and some other counties in Maryland are doing at least 2 quarters of distance learning. And so as a result, everything is virtual. And so it is very key to have a good understanding and a solid understanding of how to use Google Classroom. So my channel will be geared towards assisting teachers as much as possible, first-year teachers to veteran teachers, and getting more comfortable and familiar with using Google Classroom, because my heart is to make sure that, I'm able to help as many people as possible. So that being said, going back into how to create an assignment in Google Classroom. So I'm going to go to my demo class, which I've been using. And there's a numbering system that I use within my Google Classroom in order to make sure that students are able to easily identify and locate assignments. For more information, you can feel free to go to the video down below. But what you're going to do in order to create an assignment is hit on Create, go to Assignment. And for me, the title of my assignment is going to be based on the title of my CER. So as you guys can see, this is coming from an assignment in the past. So all I'm going to copy is this part right here. Oops. Sorry about that. So I'm going to I'm copying this section right here. And I'm going to Google Classroom. And the last number that I left off at was number 04, I believe. So I'm on number 05. I'm going to paste that title. And for my directions, I like to be as explicit as possible. But because I have really explicit directions in the actual Google Doc of the CER, all I'm going to say in my directions is carefully read and follow the directions within the document attached. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Add, go to my Google Drive, and I'm going to locate the assignment, which is right here. I'm going to go ahead and click on Insert. And then this is what's really important. So this section right here can make or break a deal. Right now, this assignment states that students can only view the file. So what does that mean? It means that students are unable to physically manipulate that document. They're not able to type into it. All they could do is view it. They have view only access. And in order to ensure that every student has their own copy of this document and is able to actually edit the document, I'm going to click on this down arrow and click on Make a Copy for each student. So when I click on Make a Copy for each student, now students have the ability to actually type in the document, and each student would actually receive the document with their name on it. Other thing I should point out is this section where it says students can edit file. You want to be careful of selecting that as well. The only time I would use that option would be if I'm providing the students with an opportunity to complete the CER as a group. So if I assign 4 to 5 students in one group, every group has one CER document, I would allow those 4 to 5 students to all be able to edit the file all at once so they can work together and collaborate in order to complete the assignment. What would happen if I clicked on students can edit file for this one assignment? What would happen is that when students try to turn in the assignment, everyone has access to it. So everyone's hand is in the pot. Everyone's manipulating the document all at once. And I, as a teacher, would have no way of determining who did what work. So you always want to make sure that you're paying very careful attention to those options. So yes. This rubric section, having a rubric is a game changer and will save you time. I will talk more about how to create a rubric and how to use it in another video. But for right now, we're just going to skip over that. For the topic, it's going to go under science. So this CER is going to be within my 5E lesson. So it's an instructional activity that I would use during my lesson. As a result, I would put it under the science section of my Google Classroom. And once again, if you go back and watch my video on how to create a structure or framework for your virtual learning environment, I talk more about it there. For the due date, I'm going to go ahead and select a due date. And then because I teach 3 class sections, I would make sure that before I assign this assignment, I would select all 3 class sections I would want this assignment to go to. And then I would click assign. And just like that, we are done. If we go down to the science section of Google Classroom, voila. Assignment number 05 Science, Apparent Brightness Debate CER. That is the assignment there. And we are done. If you found this video helpful at all whatsoever, please make sure to share it with any other teachers that you know who would find this helpful. And also, please make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you will be notified of upcoming video and content that I release. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.